Greetings, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today, we will analyze the current situation in Ukraine in detail as of February 8, 2026. The past 24 hours have seen many significant and high-profile events, so let's skip the long introductions and get straight to the analysis of the situation. Let's start with the general overview along the entire line of combat contact. Over the last 24 hours, a whole series of important changes have been recorded, and it makes sense to begin the review with the northern directions. Since early morning, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has reported that units from the North Group of forces have managed to noticeably improve their tactical position in the vicinity of the settlement of Sidorovka. We are talking about a small border village, consisting, in essence, of about 12.5 structures and located directly along the state border. Based on official briefings from the Ministry of Defense, as well as reports from the North Group itself, corresponding changes have been made to the operational situation on the map. In general, if we examine this direction from the start of the active phase of hostilities, approximately since the first days of December, Russian units have managed to significantly advance and strengthen their positions around 3 small settlements at once: Komarovka, Belaya Beryoza, and, as became known today, Sidorovka. Judging by the current dynamics, it can be assumed that the further advance of Russian troops will continue along the state borderline. It is highly probable that the next points will be Chervenaya Zarya, then Babilevka, and possibly a further development of the offensive towards Potapovka. Relying on the established bridgehead, the Russian army will likely begin a gradual shifting of the front to the west, towards settlements such as Ulanovo, Sukhodol, Malaya Sobolevka, Borshevsk, and several others. Thus, this salient located in the northern and northeastern part of Ukraine will be reduced and sliced off step by step. It is important to recall that it is precisely from this border bridgehead that the Ukrainian side has been launching a significant number of drone strikes deep into the territory of the Russian Federation for a long time. The length of this section, according to various estimates, is at least 100 kilometers. Furthermore, information has repeatedly appeared regarding Ukraine's development of long-range missile systems, as well as Western assistance in creating such weaponry. Given these factors, the current actions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation look quite logical and justified from a military point of view. However, the flip side must also be considered: the intensification of offensive actions in the northern part of the Sumy region and in the northeastern districts of the Chernihiv region will likely force the Russian command to temporarily postpone the implementation of a number of other operations, including those in the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, or Kharkiv directions, for an indefinite period. Next, we move to the Belgorod-Kharkiv bridgehead. On the night of February 8th, reports were received that the Ukrainian side had once again launched a massive strike on energy infrastructure facilities in the city of Belgorod. Published video footage clearly captures the moment of impact, presumably by a HIMARS-type missile, on one of the energy facilities. In the first seconds of the recording, one can see the missile itself approaching directly towards the target. Later, additional video materials appeared confirming that a partial blackout was recorded in Belgorod and the Belgorod region as a result of the strike. This information was subsequently partially confirmed by the regional leadership. Further south, Russian units continue to develop their offensive along the bed of the Siversk Donets River, moving in the direction of the Pechenegi Reservoir. A number of pro-Russian sources report that the armed forces of the Russian Federation have managed to improve their positions south of the settlement of Grafskoye, as well as west of Semyonovka. Currently, the main combat actions are concentrated around a small forest massif, which holds important tactical significance. The Russian army is striving to straighten the front line, after which further advancement to the south will likely begin, towards Verkhnaya Pisarevka, and then even further south to Losovka and Sosnovy Bor. It is possible that from this sector, Russian troops will attempt to launch an offensive to the east, with the aim of striking Belyi Kolodez from a southeasterly direction. Combat operations are also continuing along the state border in the most remote part of the northeast of the Kharkiv region. Here, Russian units are gradually advancing north along the border towards the Vovcha River. High-intensity usage of Russian aviation and Sontsepiok heavy flamethrower systems is noted. Strikes are being delivered against armed forces of Ukraine positions located in small settlements stretching in a chain along the entire border. The offensive in this sector continues. However, the majority of analysts agree that the Kharkiv direction in 2026 will be of an auxiliary, secondary nature. The main efforts of the Russian army are expected to be focused on operations in the Zaporizhia area, as well as in the northern and northwestern districts of the Donetsk region. Accordingly, the Kharkiv and Sumy Chernihiv directions are most likely being viewed as secondary sectors of the front. Next, we move to the Kupiansk direction, from where a number of extremely important updates are coming in today. Part of the adjustments have been confirmed by geolocated video materials, and part by official reports from the Ministry of Defense. Ukrainian sources have published video recordings capturing strikes on Russian troop positions in the northern part of the city of Kupiansk. In this footage, one can observe a series of FPV drone attacks. The objects and structures struck were precisely geolocated. Ukrainian operators were working on positions in the vicinity of Gogol and Severnaya streets. Based on this data, corresponding changes were made to the operational map. More and more video evidence suggests that the Ukrainian side is gradually losing the momentum of its counter-offensive in the Kupiansk direction, at least in its northern part. This, in turn, has given Russian units a certain respite and time to regroup. At the present moment, the Russian side has shifted to counter-attacking actions, with the aim of restoring control over territories that were lost during the Ukrainian counter-offensive. Judging by current dynamics, it is the Russian army that is seizing the initiative in this sector. Important changes have also been recorded south of Kupiansk. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reports a substantial improvement in Russian troop positions in the area of the settlement of Glushkovka. At the time of preparing this material, official video confirmations with Russian Federation flags had not been published, so adjustments on the map are tentative and may contain certain inaccuracies. Nevertheless, the very fact of this advance indicates that after the stabilization or conclusion of combat operations in the northern part of the Kupiansk bridgehead, the Russian army is gradually deploying an offensive in the southern direction, towards Kovsharovka and Novosinovo. Glushkovka was one of three key settlements upon which the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine relied in this sector. According to reports, one of these points has already passed under the control of Russian troops. This advance noticeably complicates the position of the Ukrainian grouping located in the eastern part of this salient. In the near perspective, there is a high probability that the Ukrainian side will begin withdrawing its units from field positions towards Kovsharovka and Novosinovo in an attempt to organize a defensive line along the Oskol River, at least on this section. Simultaneously, information is coming in regarding the start of a Ukrainian counteroffensive in the area of the settlement of Borovaya. By all appearances, these operations are closely linked. While Russian troops advance northward, the Ukrainian side is attempting to launch retaliatory strikes in those sectors where such activity was less expected. At the moment, attacks are being recorded in the areas of Zagrizovo, Boguslavka, and Novaya Krugliakovka. The main task of these actions likely lies in diverting the attention of Russian units and slowing down the pace of their advance towards Kovsharovka. Intensive use of aviation and aerial bombs is noted in this sector. Strikes are being delivered on Borovaya, Prishib, and other settlements. Thus, a sufficiently large-scale and tense battle is unfolding here. Furthermore, I remind you that, according to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, the Kupiansk direction is one of the key sectors where the Ukrainian side is conducting offensive actions. In conclusion, we move to the Sloviansk sector of the front. An especially large number of significant reports are coming from this direction. All major adjustments are coming from the territory located between the M03 highway and the city of Siversk. As seen on the updated map, serious changes have occurred here over the past 24 hours. The Russian army is attacking actively, with the pace of advancement noticeably increasing. Russian troop units have already come right up to such settlements as Fyodorovka, Vtoraya, Dibrova, and Lipovka, and are also advancing towards Kolenikov. Sources report that Russian units have already begun an active advance and have possibly partially entered the territory of the settlement of Krivaya Luka. Thus, the aggregate of all incoming reports indicates that the existing defensive line of the armed forces of Ukraine in this sector is, by all appearances, nearing its end. We are talking about a specific second line of defense, which in conjunction with the first line, covers the exit to the final defensive barrier before the city of Sloviansk. This barrier relies on the settlements of Ray Alexandrovka and Nikolaevka, as well as the Sloviansk thermal power plant. Russian units continue their active advance forward. At the current moment, this information is confirmed primarily by pro-Russian experts and possibly individual analysts oriented towards Western sources. At the same time, pro-Ukrainian resources are not yet confirming these details, so it is too early to draw final conclusions, and we await additional information. However, on the whole, it can be noted that the Russian army is moving further and further away from the city of Siversk, advancing ever more confidently along strategically important heights and gradually approaching the settlements of Ray Alexandrovka and Nikolaevka. In the Konstantinovka direction, no significant changes have been recorded over the past 24 hours. In the Dropolley direction, a number of sources report today that the settlement of Belitskoye has been finally clamped by Russian units in a so-called pincer. These data are currently confirmed by almost all mapping services. Moreover, Russian troops bypassed Belitskoye from the southwest direction and also managed to drive a wedge into the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine from the northern side. Thus, the settlement has found itself in full operational encirclement and, by all appearances, without real opportunities for evacuation. Additional information is expected in the near future, but there is already an extremely high probability that within the next 10 days, Belitskoye will pass under the full control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. In a broader context, the fall of Belitskoye allows us to speak of the actual beginning of the battles for the Dropolley agglomeration. Slightly further south, Ukrainian sources published video footage from the area of the M30 highway. These frames capture an FPV drone strike delivered by the Ukrainian side on a mined bridge located southwest of Grishino and east of Sergeyevka. It is noteworthy that Ukrainian resources accompanying the publication of this video claim that a bridge was destroyed, which the Russian side allegedly used for transferring units and logistical operations. However, the geographical point of the strike does not quite correspond to this commentary. Either Russian units indeed managed to cross this line earlier and possibly enter the territory of both Grishino and Sergeyevka, after which the Ukrainian side began destroying crossings used by Russian forces, or the information is presented incorrectly. At the moment, it is difficult to assert anything definitively. Next, we move to the Zaporizhia sector of the front, from where reports are beginning to arrive that are few in number but quite remarkable. As early as yesterday, Telegram channels affiliated with the Vostok group of forces reported an activation of the Ukrainian side in the northern direction. We are referring to the area of the Vovcha River, as well as the settlements of Pokrovskoye and Velikomikhailovka. Information is coming from this section that the Ukrainian side has conducted a series of counterstrikes. At the same time, the authors of the channels emphasize that during these actions, not only infantry units were used, but also heavy equipment, including tanks. At the current stage, it is difficult to definitively determine the nature of what is happening. However, some pro-Ukrainian sources are already claiming that during these strikes, or as a result of the actions of sabotage groups, Ukrainian units allegedly managed to reach the settlements of Zelagoda and Pershatravnev, and also possibly advance towards Kalinovsky. This would imply a sufficiently deep penetration. At the same time, it remains unclear exactly where the strikes were launched from, since throughout January, many geolocations of Ukrainian units were recorded between the two defense lines running slightly north and south of this section. Taken together, all this indicates that following the disconnection of Starlink systems, the Ukrainian side has apparently initiated at least two offensive actions. The first is north of Borovaya, and the second is in the east Zaporizhia direction. At the moment, information is extremely scarce, and it does not allow us to fully lift the so-called fog of war or get a clear picture of what is happening. The general picture is being formed mainly on the basis of scattered publications and comments from various Telegram channels, both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian. Nevertheless, we can already say with confidence that a Ukrainian counterstrike is taking place in the East Zaporizhia direction. What consequences it will lead to will become clearer in the next few days. Meanwhile, tension is growing in Kyiv. Volodymyr Zelensky stated today that there is an extremely high probability that the United States of America and the Russian Federation may sign a number of serious agreements and documents in the near future. Zelensky calls this complex of agreements the Dmitriev package. According to him, this refers to a certain set of documents, most likely of an investment nature, which could potentially bring significant dividends to the Russian Federation. The total value of this Dmitriev package is estimated to be around $12 trillion. Moreover, Zelensky emphasized that beyond purely economic and business projects, issues directly affecting Ukraine, its territorial integrity and state independence, might be considered within the framework of these agreements. At least, that is how he commented on the situation. Based on his statements, it can be assumed that there really exists a certain package of documents that somehow affects the territories where hostilities are currently being conducted. In addition, Zelensky drew attention to another important trend. According to him, the United States will accelerate the development of events in the near future and will attempt to force the parties to cease hostilities before June 2026. The alleged sequence looks as follows. As early as March, meaning in the coming month, a general ceasefire between the Russian Federation and Ukraine may be announced. After this, elections or a referendum will likely take place. And then in June, when either a new leader of Ukraine is elected or Volodymyr Zelensky retains his post, all remaining documents may be signed, after which hostilities will conclude. At the same time, both Zelensky himself and Western, including European, mass media emphasize that the implementation of such a scenario appears extremely unlikely. That is where we will end for today, friends. Thank you for your attention, thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to like the video. All the best to you.